War movies usually promise glory, heroism, and victory, but sometimes the most honest war stories are the ones audiences ignore. These are the million-dollar productions that stumbled in theaters, yet earned deep respect from soldiers who know the reality of battle. From forgotten World War epics to modern combat dramas, these films reveal something Hollywood often misses. The truth about war rarely looks like entertainment. Devotion. 2022. Some war stories explode with noise, others whisper their truth. Devotion belongs to the second kind. The film tells the real story of Jesse Brown, the first black naval aviator in American history, and his friendship with fellow pilot Tom Hudner during the Korean War. The production cost nearly $90 million. Studios expected a patriotic hit filled with heroic aerial battles. Instead, the film quietly crashed at the box office, earning only a fraction of its budget. But something strange happened after release. Veterans began praising the movie for a reason Hollywood rarely understands. Devotion does not glorify combat. It focuses on loyalty between pilots who trust each other with their lives every time their aircraft leave the runway. The aerial missions feel tense rather than triumphant. Fear sits beside courage in every cockpit. Brown fights not only the enemy, but also the racism he faces inside his own military ranks. For many service members, the film felt painfully honest. Devotion may have lost money in theaters, but among veterans, it earned something far more valuable. Respect. The Thin Red Line, 1998. In 1998, two war films arrived in the same year. One became a thunderous box office success. The other became something far stranger. The Thin Red Line told the story of American soldiers fighting on Guadalcanal during the Second World War. Directed by Terrence Malick, the film carried a budget above $50 million and featured one of the most impressive casts ever assembled for a war movie. Expectations were enormous. Yet when audiences entered theaters, they encountered a war film unlike anything they expected. Instead of nonstop action, the movie offered quiet reflection. Soldiers spoke in soft internal monologues about fear, nature, and the meaning of life. Many viewers left confused. The box office numbers disappointed the studio, but veterans often responded very differently. Many soldiers said the film captured the strange mental state of men waiting for battle. Long moments of silence, sudden bursts of violence, the constant question of why war exists at all. The Thin Red Line did not chase spectacle. It searched for the human soul hidden inside war. And that search left a lasting impression on those who understood combat best. Windtalkers. 2002. During World War II, the United States faced a deadly problem. Military codes were constantly being cracked by enemy intelligence. The solution arrived from a culture few people expected. Navajo Marines created an unbreakable code based on their native language. Messages transmitted in Navajo moved across Pacific battlefields faster than the enemy could even understand them. Windtalkers attempted to bring that remarkable story to the screen. Directed by action filmmaker John Woo, the production carried a massive budget above $100 million. Studios expected an explosive blockbuster. Instead, the film struggled badly in theaters and barely recovered its cost. Critics argued that the movie focused too heavily on fictional soldiers rather than the real Navajo heroes. Yet among veterans, the reaction was often more forgiving. Many service members appreciated that the film introduced audiences to the extraordinary role Navajo code talkers played in the Pacific War. For decades, their contribution remained secret. Windtalkers may not have conquered the box office, but it reminded viewers that some of the most important victories in war are won not with bullets, but with words no enemy can understand. The Big Red One, 1980. Some war movies are crafted for spectacle. The Big Red One was created from memory. Director Samuel Fuller had fought in the Second World War with the 1st Infantry Division known as the Big Red One. Decades later, he returned to those battlefield memories and shaped them into a story that followed a single squad of American soldiers fighting their way across the war from North Africa to the heart of Germany. The production cost a significant amount for its time, yet the film struggled to attract mainstream audiences when it reached theaters in 1980. Viewers expected heroic triumphs and grand victory speeches. Fuller offered something quieter and far more unsettling. The soldiers in this story move from battlefield to battlefield with growing exhaustion. Their leader, played by Lee Marvin, is not a glamorous hero. He is a survivor who understands that war is not about glory, but about endurance. Cities fall, armies advance. Yet the men in the squad measure victory in simpler terms. Did everyone make it through the day? Veterans later embraced the film because it captured the strange rhythm of combat. Long periods of waiting followed by sudden terror. Moments of dark humor shared between soldiers who know tomorrow might be their last. The Big Red One did not conquer the box office yet. Among those who served it, earned a reputation as one of the most authentic war stories ever filmed. Cross of Iron. 1977. War cinema rarely invites viewers to stand on the losing side of history. Cross of Iron dares to do exactly that. Directed by Sam Peckinpah, the film takes place on the Eastern Front during the Second World War. German troops fight desperately against advancing Soviet forces, while their commanders chase medals and prestige far from the front lines. The film carried a strong cast and an ambitious production, but American audiences reacted cautiously. Watching a war story told from the perspective of German soldiers created discomfort, and the film struggled financially in the United States. Yet the passage of time transformed Cross of Iron into a respected classic. Peckinpah strips away the patriotic mythology often attached to war movies. His soldiers are weary men trapped in a brutal conflict that offers little hope of survival. Mud fills the trenches. Artillery tears through the landscape. Every advance costs more lives than anyone expected. James Coburn plays Sergeant Steiner, a hardened fighter who understands the truth of war better than the officers above him. For Steiner, medals mean nothing. Keeping his men alive means everything. Military historians and veterans often praise the film for its relentless realism. Cross of Iron reminds viewers that war destroys soldiers on every side of the battlefield. Ideology fades quickly when survival becomes the only objective. The Beast of War. 1988. In 1988, a small war film slipped quietly into theaters and almost vanished without notice. Its title was The Beast of War. The story begins during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. A Soviet tank crew attacks an Afghan village, leaving destruction behind. During the retreat, their tank becomes separated from the rest of the unit and wanders deep into hostile territory. What follows is less a traditional war movie and more a psychological siege. Afghan fighters begin tracking the tank across the desert, determined to destroy the machine that devastated their home. Inside the vehicle, the crew begins to fracture under pressure. Orders become meaningless when survival becomes the only priority. The tank itself becomes a symbol of overwhelming military power, yet it also becomes a prison for the men trapped inside it. The production cost millions, yet the film struggled to attract audiences during its release. Cold War fatigue and limited marketing meant the movie faded quickly from theaters. But soldiers who later discovered the film recognized something chillingly accurate. War is not always fought between armies. Sometimes it becomes a battle between fear and sanity inside a small group of men trapped together in an impossible situation. The Beast of War captures that claustrophobic tension with remarkable intensity. For many veterans, the film feels less like entertainment and more like a haunting reflection of how quickly war can break the human mind. Kingdom of Heaven. 2005. At first glance, Kingdom of Heaven looked like the safest bet in Hollywood. Ridley Scott had already conquered the world with Gladiator. Now he turned his camera toward the Crusades and the legendary struggle for Jerusalem. The scale was enormous. Towering fortresses filled the screen. Thousands of soldiers clashed beneath burning banners. The production cost more than $130 million, and expectations were sky high. Then the film arrived in theaters, and something strange happened. Audiences walked out confused. Critics complained the story felt rushed and emotionally distant. The box office numbers collapsed far below expectations. Within weeks, the film gained a reputation as another expensive historical epic that had failed to capture public interest. But the story behind the failure slowly surfaced. Studio executives had forced the film to be shortened before release. Nearly an hour of crucial material vanished. Entire character arcs disappeared. Political tensions that explained the conflict were suddenly missing. Years later, Ridley Scott released the director cut, restoring almost 50 minutes of lost footage. The transformation was remarkable. Characters finally had motivations. Alliances and betrayals made sense. The Crusades were no longer portrayed as a simple clash between heroes and villains, but as a tragic struggle driven by faith, ambition, and fear. Military historians and veterans began praising the restored version for its mature view of warfare. Leaders on both sides are shown wrestling with the terrible responsibility of sending men into battle. The greatest victory in the film is not conquest, but restraint. Kingdom of Heaven eventually found the audience it deserved. What once looked like a box office failure quietly became one of the most respected historical war films of the modern era. The 13th Warrior, 1999. Few films in Hollywood history carry a production story as chaotic as The 13th Warrior. The project began with enormous ambition. Based on a novel by Michael Crichton, the story followed an Arab diplomat who becomes an unlikely companion to a band of Viking warriors traveling north to confront a mysterious and terrifying enemy. The idea promised adventure, mystery, and brutal medieval combat. The studio poured enormous money into the production. Then the trouble began. Creative disagreements between the director and studio executives triggered massive reshoots. Entire sequences were rewritten. New scenes were filmed months later at staggering cost. By the time the project was finished, the budget had exploded to somewhere between $100 and $160 million. When the film finally reached theaters, the result shocked Hollywood. The 13th Warrior earned only a fraction of its cost and quickly became one of the biggest financial disasters of the decade. Yet time has a strange way of rewriting reputations. Among military enthusiasts and veterans, the film slowly gained appreciation. The story focuses on a small group of warriors who must stand together against a mysterious enemy that vastly outnumbers them. Their survival depends not on strategy from distant generals, but on trust between men fighting side by side. The protagonist begins the story as an outsider who understands nothing about Viking culture or combat. Gradually, he learns the discipline, courage, and brotherhood that binds the warriors together. Veterans often recognize that transformation. In war, strangers become brothers with frightening speed because survival demands absolute trust. The 13th Warrior may have been a disaster at the box office, yet its depiction of loyalty and courage in the face of overwhelming danger continues to resonate with those who understand the battlefield. Stalingrad, 1993. Few battles represent the brutal reality of war more clearly than Stalingrad. The German film Stalingrad attempted to bring that nightmare to the screen by telling the story from the perspective of soldiers trapped inside the doomed German Sixth Army. At the beginning, the soldiers believe victory is inevitable. Propaganda fills their heads with confidence. They march east, expecting glory and quick triumph. Instead, they walk into one of the deadliest battles in human history. The film carried a large budget for a European production, but it struggled to find audiences outside Europe. Many viewers felt uncomfortable watching a war story told through the eyes of German troops. Yet the film never attempts to justify the war. Instead, it focuses on the human tragedy of soldiers caught inside a catastrophic campaign. As the battle drags on, the city becomes a frozen graveyard. Buildings collapse into piles of rubble. Supplies disappear. Hunger spreads through the ranks. Winter arrives like a silent executioner. The soldiers slowly realize they have been abandoned by leaders who refuse to admit defeat. Historians and veterans often praise Stalingrad for its merciless honesty. The film shows how propaganda and pride pushed thousands of young men into a battle they could never win. There are no triumphant speeches, no heroic music swelling at the moment of victory. Only the slow realization that war has consumed everything around them. Stalingrad did not become a commercial success, but it remains one of the most chilling portrayals of modern warfare ever filmed. Green Zone, 2010. When Green Zone arrived in theaters, it carried the weight of enormous expectations. The film reunited director Paul Greengrass with actor Matt Damon after the massive success of the Bourne series. The studio invested close to $100 million, believing audiences would rush to see a modern war thriller set during the early days of the Iraq invasion. Instead, the film quietly collapsed at the box office. Green Zone tells the story of an American officer searching for the weapons of mass destruction that were used to justify the invasion of Iraq. As the investigation unfolds, he slowly discovers that the intelligence guiding the war may have been dangerously flawed. For mainstream audiences, the film felt uncomfortable. It did not offer the clear heroism that many viewers expect from military stories. Instead, it presented confusion, uncertainty, and political tension surrounding the battlefield. But among veterans, the reaction was very different. Many service members recognized the chaotic environment portrayed in the film. The early years of the Iraq War were filled with conflicting orders, unreliable intelligence, and constant uncertainty about who could be trusted. The movie captures the strange experience of fighting a war while simultaneously questioning the reasons behind it. Soldiers operate inside a fog of information where the truth becomes harder to find than the enemy. Where Green Zone may not have thrilled audiences looking for simple action, but it earned respect from many veterans who appreciated its willingness to confront the complicated reality of modern warfare. A Midnight Clear, 1992. War films often focus on battles. A Midnight Clear focuses on something far more fragile, a moment of humanity inside the middle of war. The story takes place during the winter of 1944 as American soldiers move through the frozen forests of Europe during the final months of World War II. A small reconnaissance squad encounters a group of German soldiers who have quietly lost the will to fight. Instead of attacking each other, the two groups begin communicating across the battlefield, hoping to arrange a peaceful surrender. The film carried a modest budget yet still struggled commercially when it reached theaters. Its quiet tone and reflective pacing felt very different from the explosive war movies dominating cinemas in the early 1990s. But many veterans found the story deeply moving. A Midnight Clear explores the strange reality that soldiers on opposing sides often share the same fears, the same exhaustion, and the same desire to survive long enough to see home again. The American soldiers slowly realize the Germans they face are not monsters. They are young men trapped inside the same war machine. The fragile peace between the two groups becomes an act of quiet rebellion against the violence surrounding them. Veterans frequently praise the film because it captures a truth rarely discussed in war cinema. Sometimes the greatest courage a soldier can show is choosing not to fight when humanity still has a chance to survive. Hamburger Hill, 1987. During the Vietnam War, one battle became a symbol of the brutal cost of fighting for a single piece of ground. The Battle of Hamburger Hill in 1969. The film Hamburger Hill attempted to recreate that harrowing conflict by following a group of American soldiers ordered to capture a heavily defended hill in South Vietnam. The terrain is steep, the enemy is deeply entrenched, and every assault up the hillside ends in devastating casualties. The production carried a large budget for a war film in the 1980s, yet it struggled to attract audiences when it was released. For many Americans were still wrestling with the painful memory of Vietnam, and few wanted to revisit that chapter of history on the big screen. But veterans responded to the film in a different way. Hamburger Hill does not glorify the battle. Instead, it shows the exhausting cycle of attacks, withdrawals, and repeated assaults that define the conflict. Soldiers climb the hill again and again while artillery explodes around them and the jungle becomes a graveyard. The film also focuses on the bond between soldiers who know their survival depends entirely on each other. Their humor, their fear, and their determination feel painfully real. Many Vietnam veterans later said the movie captured the emotional truth of the war better than most Hollywood productions. Hamburger Hill may not have conquered the box office, but it stands today as one of the most honest portrayals of the Vietnam battlefield ever filmed. Rules of Engagement, 2000. Some war films fail because audiences reject them. Others fail because they ask questions that make viewers uncomfortable. Rules of Engagement belongs firmly in the second category. Released in the year 2000, the film follows Colonel Terry Childers, a decorated Marine officer played by Samuel L. Jackson. During a tense mission in Yemen, his unit is ordered to protect the American embassy while violent protests erupt outside the compound. As the situation spirals out of control, Childers orders his Marines to open fire on the crowd after gunshots erupt from the surrounding chaos. The battle ends quickly, but the consequences last far longer. When disturbing footage of the incident surfaces, the United States government places Childers on trial for war crimes. His defense attorney, a fellow Marine played by Tommy Lee Jones, begins uncovering the truth behind the chaotic mission. The film carried a budget close to $60 million, and the studio hoped it would become a major military courtroom drama. Instead, the movie struggled to attract audiences, and its box office results fell well below expectations. Yet many veterans saw something important inside the story. Rules of Engagement explores the impossible decisions soldiers sometimes face in the fog of conflict. Commanders must make life and death choices within seconds while surrounded by confusion, fear, and incomplete information. The film forces viewers to confront a harsh reality of modern warfare. And the battlefield is no longer limited to distant front lines. Soldiers often operate in crowded cities where civilians, militants, and allies exist side by side. For veterans, the courtroom drama at the center of the film feels painfully familiar. Soldiers are trained to act decisively under pressure, yet afterward their decisions may be examined by politicians, lawyers, and the media who were never present when the bullets started flying. Rules of Engagement does not offer easy answers. Instead, it asks whether anyone truly understands the burden carried by those who must make impossible decisions in the middle of war. The film may not have become a box office success, but its central question continues to echo among those who have faced the chaos of real combat. War leaves its mark not only on history, but on the stories we tell about it. Some films fail at the box office, yet succeed in capturing the reality soldiers remember. If you enjoy uncovering forgotten war movies and hidden Hollywood stories, subscribe and join us for the next deep dive.